good morning. I just tried to go live, but of course my internet didn't work well enough. So today we're going to talk briefly about how to overwinter flowers and why you need to do that. So I'm Sarah, I'm a flower farmer and a florist. And one of the first things you experience when you start growing cut flowers on a professional level is that there's this period of time between spring blooms and your summer flowers where nothing is blooming. So one way to combat that is by planting all of your early spring flowers or early summer flowers in the fall. So there's three things you need to know in order to do this. The first one is you need to know what will survive your winter. So this means finding your zone. So in the Northern Hemisphere in the US and Canada, we have the USDA zones. And I will show you links on where to find this if you are in other parts of the world so that you can see what I'm talking about that in a way that relates to where you are. So we're going to go over your zone, and then we need to say, okay, so this is my zone, and then look at the flowers that can survive in your zone. The next thing you need to do is you need to look at your frost dates. So you have your last spring frost in the spring, and then your first fall frost date. So for me in Iowa, that is September 30th. And so then you say, okay, so before your frost date, you need to plant any seeds or seedlings 6 to 8 weeks before that frost date. So if my first fall frost is September 30th, 6 weeks before that date is mid-August, right? So in mid-August, I need to be planting seeds or transplants. So if I'm going to plant transplants, that means I need to plan a date 6 to 10 weeks further back in the summer of when to plant those transplants and start those seedlings. Does that kind of make sense? So that's the first method of planting fall flowers. The second method is to actually plant your seeds after it freezes. What happens then is that they go through a vernalization period and they get the moisture from snow if you have snowfall, and they get the cool weather, and it actually will help them germinate, but you'll also lose more of them than if you had planted them earlier in the season. So once you have your zone and your dates and the flowers that you can grow that will survive your coldest winter temperature, that's what your zone tells you. So let me show you what I have for that. I will show you really quickly all the different tools I have that you can use for that. If I can find the right screen to share. Yeah, so this should share the whole. Okay, so if you have access to on Grow Flowers, if you have access to either of my planting calendars, the Flower Assistant or the Garden Plan, all this information is in there. So you just go to my account. If you're logged in, I'll move this, my account, courses. So the Flower Assistant is right here. This is an automatic planting calendar so that if you give it your frost dates, it'll give you all of the dates to plant, and it will print out a PDF planner for you. It's pretty awesome. So in this, I actually have a fall planting planner for you. It's not super elaborate. I just made it in a Google Doc. So let me show you what it is right here. So the first step you want to do, like we talked about, is write down your first frost date. So I would put September 30th. Then I put my seed starting date. So if I were going to start my seeds, let's say I'm going to do 12 weeks before that because I'm going to transplant them. So that would be in July at this point. It's too late for that this year where I am. So if you have a later frost, like in November, you have plenty of time. But right now for me, I have enough time to just direct seed plants into my beds. So I would just choose today, probably. My zone is 5, and then I'll pick today as my transplanting date. So here's where you can list down what you're starting from seed, what you're direct seeding and what you're buying. Like I said, this isn't the best doc in the whole world, but it helps. And it right here in this section is the frost tolerant flowers, but they, and further down, I'll break them into how hardy they are by zone. So here's where we talk about zone. So most of these flowers are hardy through zone 4. One thing that I missed on this little list is Icelandic poppies, because those are actually great to grow over winter in zones 4, 3, 2, and 1. So here is where we're going to first, so using this, we're going to first look up our USDA zones. So I like to use the Farmer's Almanac for frost dates. And then here is hardiness zone converter if you live outside of the US or Canada. So this is a map, and then you can follow the instructions here to find your hardiness zone. And then we'll go back here and see, so if my first date, frost date, is October 5th, that means I need to plant my seedlings by October 24th or my seeds on October 24th. The transplanting date is also your direct seeding date. And then I would have needed to start my seeds 6 to 8 weeks before that on July 13th. So if you are in a colder zone, I recommend you plant your seeds just right now. And then if you go further down this little planner, I kind of show you all of these different things. So zone 4, delphinium, snapdragons, and yarrow should be hardy enough to survive your winters. In zone 5, campanula, delphinium, feverfew, snapdragons, sweet william, yarrow, and buplurium. You can direct seed these too. Specifically, the feverfew, the sweet william, and the yarrow will do well. The campanula, delphinium, and snapdragons really should be transplanted. So you can either buy those now as seedlings or wait to plant them in the spring. In zone 6, campanula, so it goes increasingly down zone 6, and you'll see how more and more things can survive your winter. Zone 8. And so from this point, let's talk a little bit about how to make sure they survive your winter. So just because it says that it is technically hardy in your zone, it doesn't mean it's going to survive. It doesn't mean it's going to get enough water. It doesn't mean that the frost times are going to come at a weird wonky cycle. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get a bomb cyclone that happens here in the Midwest. So there's all of these different factors that can impact your gardening or your farming. Like you've experienced that probably many times. So what you want to do is you either want to plant the hardiest of flowers and make sure they're set up well before your frost date, or you want to provide some additional protection for them. So additional protection is a high tunnel, a greenhouse, or low tunnels. Low tunnels are great because they are affordable. What you do is you buy hoops, or you can make hoops. I can show you some videos. I can link some videos to hoop benders if you would like to see that, how you can bend the wire yourself. You can just buy wire from the hardware store and make these little hoops that are about 2 feet off the ground. And then you cover them with Agribon. Agribon is great because it lets water through. So not directly, but it will let more light and more moisture through than just a general plastic. It's a little bit more breathable. So that's what you do. And so you cover these low tunnels with Agribon, and then you just need to secure the Agribon on the sides. So there's different roping mechanisms you can use. You can use clips, but they're really expensive, or you can use sandbags or bricks, or in my case, I usually just use logs because I have lots of wood. So that is how that works. So, and if you want to see how it works, let me go here. Oh, nope, that's not going to work. Okay, and now let's talk. I'm going to show you how to use the garden planning app so that you can have your automatic calendar for you, planting calendar calculated for you. But if you are in one of those colder zones, what you need to know is that it is okay to not plant fall flowers, because if it is more important for you, for your investment and for your time and for your sanity to plant in the spring, then do that. That's often what I do, simply because I have a hard time keeping row cover on. And so it's just not guaranteed. But there are things that will overwinter here, and I will plant those. So delphinium does great, because I'm on 5A in a river valley. So the cold air settles in here more. And we also get really harsh winds, again, because of the valley, it like circles in here. So I tend to plant more in the spring. So if you are going to plant more in the spring, what you need to be prepared for is just to have your garden beds prepped and ready. Because again, if you're in a place that gets a lot of snowfall and is muddy, you cannot cultivate the soil in the spring. So I have about, in Iowa, I have about 4 to 5 weeks before my first last spring frost, that I am able to actually work in the ground, to be able to get through any matter of dirt at all, because it's just so muddy and the temperature is so variable. Okay, so hopefully that little demonstration will show you what is possible to plant. Other resources I highly recommend are Cool Flowers by Lisa Mason Ziegler. That book is absolutely amazing. Anything by Alan Armitage is great. And then to really just go by that formula, go by what is my zone, when are my frost dates, what do I have time to plant still, will it survive my winter, and then to do that. And then if you don't have things that will survive your winter, and if you don't have time to either direct seed now or grow transplants to seed now, what I suggest you do is to plant after your frost date in prepared beds, or to wait to plant in the spring. So like I said, if you are not planting fall flowers now, the number one thing you need to be doing is prepping those beds, so that when the spring comes around, you have time and the ability to plant. So you're not just stuck waiting around in mud, because you can take mulch or whatever, even if the beds are just left uncovered over the winter, you can go in there and soil surface sow different cold hardy flowers like larkspur, buplarium. There's a whole list of them. I won't remember all of them right now. And so what is helpful to know about the spring too is, because your temperatures are getting warmer, you don't have to follow the varieties that are only hardy in your zone. You can follow all of them regardless of how cold hardy they are, because at that point your temperatures are getting warmer and warmer, and they won't start to germinate until they feel like it's warm enough for them to do so. Does that kind of make sense? And also in the spring, part of those dates are important, because if you have your beds prepared, you can start your seedlings 12 weeks before your first last spring frost date. That's how that works. So that's why it's really important to do this. If you are looking for row covers and hoops, I know of a place that is in Pennsylvania and in Iowa called Nolt's that's really inexpensive to order from. Otherwise, Johnny's Seeds has some stuff, but it's super expensive. They, trying to think, Lisa Mason Ziegler on the gardening workshop, she has more too, but it's also a little bit pricier, and you can buy things on Amazon. So it just depends on what quantities you're buying it in and how much you need, because if you're just doing raised beds, then you only need smaller amounts. And so it's perfect to buy from the gardener's workshop. Definitely do that. If you need a little bit larger amounts, Johnny Seeds is good. And then you can also look for a local greenhouse supply store. So that's what I recommend. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. I will set up a link so that you can get that download. And I will also send you the info on how to use the flower assistant so that you can calculate all of these flower dates yourself. It's really helpful and easy. So hopefully that helps. If you have more questions, let me know, and feel free to comment with your specific zone and what you're wondering if you can grow, and I will help you out. So have a good day. Bye.